Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're doing a deep dive into the American wallet.
And it's a necessary dive, but maybe a slightly painful one,
It is. The source material is the latest review from our partner, Reference Trading Post, and they've titled it The Cost of Living. Ouch.
which is pretty spot on. What I think is so powerful here is how they lay everything out. You have the hard state-by-state data from the BEA.
The Bureau of Economic Analysis.
Right, and it's sitting right next to these just eye-watering anecdotes about costs and the real political fallout we're seeing.
Exactly. So our mission today is to cut through all that noise. We want to understand the real depth of this financial strain.
See how politicians are scrambling to respond.
And then, crucially, figure out what the economic outlook is when the American consumer is showing these signs of stress.
Yeah, that's the central tension, isn't it? How can the national growth figures look okay, robust even, while household spending power can vary by almost 50% depending on what state you live in?
It's a huge divide. So let's start where the sources do, with the political debris.
The fallout.
Right. Voters have been pretty light about this. We just saw the end of the longest federal government shutdown in U.S. history.
And the deal itself was pretty straightforward. It restored funding, it stopped federal layoffs until January 30th.
And it secured funding for SNP, which is a huge deal for so many families.
A very big deal, all the way through September 30th of next year. But the political cost was high.
It was. The analysis shows the Democrats actually came out of it, quote, more battered. You had 8 of their senators crossing the aisle.
But the real damage, politically speaking, was on the Republican side. And for the former president.
No question. His approval ratings just plummeted after the shutdown. A Reuters Ipsos poll found that half of Americans blamed the Republicans for the whole thing.
And that wasn't just, an abstract poll number. It showed up in the voting booth.
Immediately, we saw these sweeping Democratic wins in state races, New York, Virginia, New Jersey.
And the message was crystal clear. It was a reaction to the rising cost of living and those costly import tariffs that were hitting everyday goods.
It makes perfect sense when you see the numbers on the ground. Trading Post points to New York City, where this affordability crisis literally reshaped local politics.
Yeah, leading to the election of Zoran Mandani, who's only 34. His whole campaign was about housing and cost concerns.
So what are the numbers? What does that crisis actually look like?
Well, the Financial Times article they cite is just staggering. Think about childcare in New York. The average is about $1,450 a month.
A month.
And the research shows only about 14.5% of families can actually realistically afford that.
Wow. And I'm guessing housing is a similar story.
Even worse, over half of all renters in the city spend 30% or more of their income just on rent.
So that's before food, before utilities, before anything else.
Exactly. And then you add the fact that 60 to 80,000 New Yorkers are sleeping in shelters every single night. This is a profound social crisis, not just, a budget spreadsheet problem.
And it's not just New York. The report uses some anecdotes from an affluent friend in Boston, and the costs are exploding everywhere.
Right, and in areas you might not even think about.
Like what? What's going off the charts?
The simple stuff. A standard lunch for 2 people, like a sandwich, is now $35.
Okay.
But it's the unexpected things that break you. A vet bill for a German Shepherd, just for an x-ray, was $1,300.
$1,300 for one x-ray?
Yep. And the CT scan option was $3,000.
That puts basic pet ownership into a luxury category for most people. An unexpected bill like that would wipe out most families' savings.
It would. And we'll see in a minute just how thin that savings margin is. Even home maintenance is getting out of reach. Removing 11 trees from a property costs $9,000.
It all just illustrates the speed of this inflation, even for people who are, relatively high earners.
And it's forcing families to rethink huge life decisions, like education. The report has this startling comparison. A 3-year graduate program in the U.S.
Okay.
can cost you around $300,000. Now, compare that to the UK. For an international student, the equivalent program is somewhere between, say, $43,000 and $138,000.
That's not even a close comparison. The incentive to just leave the country for school to avoid that kind of debt is massive.
It's a financial escape hatch.
So this brings us to the hard data from the BEA. We need to look at the numbers for all 50 states to really get it.
Let's start with income. The national average disposable income, so after tax, for 2024 was $64,426.
Which, on its own, sounds okay.
That's a decent, yeah. Until you look at the map. That average hides this enormous disparity.
How big?
Well, D.C. is at the very top. They're at 92,365.
Okay, very high.
But at the bottom, you have Mississippi at just 47,831.
Wait, so that's a 48% gap from top to bottom?
Almost half the spending power. It's like two different countries economically.
And here's the statistic that really got me. Almost 65% of U.S. states have take-home pay that is below that national average.
Exactly. The average is being skewed. It's being propped up by a handful of super high-earning areas like D.C. and Connecticut.
Which masks the pain everywhere else.
Unsurprisingly, consumption tracks right along with income. National average spending is about $58,500. D.C., again, is at the top, spending over $93,000.
And a lot of that has to be housing, right?
Oh, absolutely. The report breaks down housing strain in big cities. In 2023, New York was 38%.
38% of all household spending just on housing.
Well, Los Angeles was 37%, Chicago 34%. It's just swallowing budgets whole.
And in some places, the math becomes completely disconnected from reality.
You're talking about San Francisco.
I am. The report uses the official poverty guidelines to show that a single parent there needs to make $105,000 a year.
Just to cover the basics.
Yeah, spending nearly 35% on housing and 23% on childcare alone. But the average disposable income for the entire state of California is only $73,000.
And that's the crisis in a nutshell. The numbers do not add up.
Which brings us to what you call the key metric, the PCE to PDI ratio.
Right. Personal consumption expenditures to personal disposable income.
So basically what you spend versus what you make.
Exactly. And if that number hits 1.0, it means you are spending every dollar you earn. If it's over 1.0, you're going into debt or burning through savings.
And the national average is 0.90.
90%. 90 cents of every dollar you take home is already spent.
That leaves a 10% margin for everything. Emergencies, saving, investing. That's not a margin, that's a tightrope.
It's nothing, especially when you get hit with a $1,300 vet bill. And it gets worse. 27 states are above that national average.
And 3 are actually over 1.0.
3 are Maine, the District of Columbia, and Delaware. They are structurally, as a whole, spending more than they earn.
Wow. And this isn't new. The analysis looked back to 2019.
And it confirmed the trend. In 34 states, real spending has been rising faster than real income. Purchasing power has been eroding for years.
Okay, so that mountain of data explains the big political pivot we talked about earlier.
It does. The cost of living crisis got so severe, it forced the administration to completely change its domestic plan.
Instead of the usual corporate tax cuts or deregulation.
Right, the traditional Republican playbook. They went for what the report calls the One Big Beautiful Folly Bill.
Which was basically a huge demand-side stimulus package, tax credits, cash transfers.
All aimed directly at households. It was a massive ideological shift, but it shows you how high the pressure was.
This puts the Federal Reserve in a really tough spot.
A very tough spot. You have inflation picking up, but at the same time, the government is pushing for more stimulus because households are so stretched.
Okay, hold on. We've just laid out a pretty bleak picture for the American consumer. How can Trading Post still have an overall positive assessment for the U.S. economy? That feels like a huge disconnect.
It does, and that is the most critical question in the whole analysis. The argument is that while the consumer is hurting, other major indicators are strong enough to carry the economy, at least for investors.
So what are those indicators?
Well, business cycle indicators like profit and investment are pointing to growth strengthening in 2026. Fiscal policy is actually very supportive, with that $3.1 trillion in benefits.
And monetary policy is expected to ease.
Right. So because of all that, Trading Post is staying overweight U.S. equities. They think the market rally will broaden out beyond just tech.
So they see any downturn from the consumer side as just a healthy correction?
That's the term they use, yeah. And the Q3 earnings data really backs up that corporate optimism.
How so?
Median earnings growth across the Russell 3000 was 11% year over year.
That's very strong.
It's broad-based, too. 6 of the 11 S&P 500 sectors had positive growth. Power companies, real estate, industrials, all showing strong sales and expanding margins.
So corporate America is thriving, even as Main Street is just barely hanging on with that 0.90 spending ratio?
That's the tension. So for you, the listener, we're left with this contradiction, a positive investment outlook existing right alongside this profound household strain.
Which leaves us with a final thought to chew on.
It does. And the question is this: When you have these huge disparities between states, I mean, the economic reality in D.C. versus Mississippi is just radically different. How effective can one single national economic policy be?
Can one solution really fix a crisis that looks so different depending on where you live?
It's a complex puzzle, but at least now we have a clearer picture of the pieces.
Have a good weekend. Trading Post will be back next week.